everything might not be fun.
The politicians keep saying, why is our healthcare system so expensive? And like, duh.
How does that make any sense?
We'll figure it out. This is the thing, I'm just getting totally unhinged now, and I don't know what to do. Hey, so I have to talk about this because it's on my mind, and that's cleared a little bit when I'm running, but I just want to get it out. So there was a study that just came out, good study. It looked at people with dementia, Alzheimer's disease, terrible, terrible disease. A disease that we as a country are spending about $250 billion on every year, and we can't seem to be getting anywhere. I have tons of patients with Alzheimer's disease, and unfortunately, their families and them are not getting any help despite all of this money being spent. So this study looked at something that most of us already know. People with dementia who exercise, who eat a good diet, we know the good diet, low in carbohydrates, high in fruits and vegetables, who have support, whose families have support, actually do much better. They improve. They stay out of the hospital. They stay away from nursing homes for a longer period of time. So we know this stuff. It's barely published because the big drug companies aren't publishing this stuff. They don't want to. And this is the thing. We are spending $4 or so billion on dementia drugs. Medicare alone is spending $11 billion on dementia treatments. And I got to tell you, none of that works. All these neurologists people go to, all these MRIs they get thinking they're going to find something, all these useless drugs. This is kind of how I look at the drugs. There's a new drug that came out that combines two of the other drugs, Namenda and Aricept, and puts them into one. Why do they do that? Because those two drugs have become generic and they're cheaper, so the company says, well, if we combine them, we could charge the big bucks, which is what they're doing. And they got some bozo to write a study to show how great they are using some old data that is really very questionable, and they tout that as being the definitive proof this works. And this is how I tell my patients it is. It's like you got a boat, and there's an engine on the boat that just doesn't work, because Aricept doesn't work. There are a lot of little studies that show a puny benefit if you look at some kind of 70-point scale, but when they actually have studies that ask families and caregivers whether it works about the same as placebo. Interestingly, placebo works pretty well. It always does. Placebo's great. If we could use placebo, we'd be in good shape. Namenda works even less well. That's another drug. A little different mechanism of action, never proven to work. Again, these studies go just for 1 year. It's absolutely miraculous that every study on these drugs goes up to a year. The reason is placebo's catching up. There's such a minor gap between placebo and drug up till that year, but by a year, placebo is catching up. And most of us think the reason it's not published past a year is because placebo starts doing better than the drug after a year. So clearly that's not going to be published. But regardless, so back to my analogy. You take a boat, you put an engine on the boat called Aricept. That engine doesn't work. The doctor says, well, give it a try anyway. It may not work, but give it a try. So then the doctor says, well, let's put another engine on the boat, Namenda. Well, that doesn't work either. So let's try it anyway. Let's see how it does. And then when those two don't work, the doctor says, I got even a better idea. We got this engine that's a double engine and two engines in one. They both don't work. He doesn't tell you that. Let's put that on the boat. It costs a lot more money, but you get two engines in one. And the boat just sits there. That's dementia drugs. And unfortunately, the people who are prescribing these drugs are the specialists, the experts, the neurologists and psychiatrists. Doctors like me, geriatric doctors, we tend not to give these drugs because we get it. They don't work, they actually have a lot of side effects, and they're a lot of money. Funny story about Namenda, because a lot of families I take care of believe in these drugs. They're told they work. They see an effect, which is mostly the placebo effect. I had a patient who lived in an assisted living facility who was on this drug, Namenda. And I had been telling the son, it's probably useless, but the son wanted to hold on to the drug until it got too expensive. Then the son said, let's try her off the drug and let's see. So I went back a month later and I asked the son, what do you think? She's been off the drug for a month, so I thought. And the son said, you know what? The minute you stop that drug, she has gotten worse. I asked my brother, asked my sister, she's been deteriorating. She said, I hate to tell you, but I guess the drug was working. She's worse now. So I asked some of the nursing aides in the place, and they didn't think she was any worse. Talked to her, she seemed the same as usual, but you know, the families are usually right. So I went to the nurse and I said, I guess we gotta restart the Namenda again. And the nurse just looked at me, said, don't you remember? The son said, don't stop the Namenda until she runs out of the pills. She's still taking Namenda. She was still taking Namenda. But the placebo effect is so strong that the idea that these drugs will work is so pervasive that, in fact, the son believed that she was worse. And that's the way all these drugs are. When people go to a neurologist, they believe they're getting expert care. Can you imagine if we took that $11 billion that Medicare is spending for these drugs and we put it toward things that actually work? We give caregivers support. We send people with dementia to exercise programs. We work on nutrition and diet. Can you imagine if we did that? We'd probably keep people out of the hospital. We would save billions and billions of dollars. Forget that. We would improve people's lives. We would make this disease more bearable. That's our healthcare system. As the bozos are thinking about what to do up in Congress, that's what they're missing. That's what we see. So I just want to do something else next week that's a little different. I want to go over, I'm throwing out these numbers, billions and billions. I sound like Carl Sagan. I just want to tell you what that means in real terms. Because in one sense, it's important to know how much money we are wasting in the healthcare system. On the other sense, it's important to know how all this waste is hurting you and your family and all the patients who are exposed to this nonsense. So next time we're going to talk about the big picture. What does this money really mean? Right now, I'm finishing my run. Hey, hope you like the podcast. We'll be back next week. I'm going to give you some information. If you want to check the website, if you want to email me, if you got your own stories, let's talk about it. See you next week.